Hello, everyone. I'll let everybody kind of join us. I'll give everybody like a minute. Welcome to Using School Wellness Centers to Address the Emotional Needs of Students. I appreciate your tuning in this evening. I'm AnneMoss Rogers, your host of Mental Health Awareness Education, and I'm a mental health and suicide education expert, professional speaker, trainer, and consultant. As some of you know, I lost my younger son to suicide in 2015 from depression and addiction, which is what drives my work and my passion today. And I'm here today with the lovely Jennifer Bitton, assistant principal at Lee High School in Utah, to educate us on starting a high school wellness center. And Jennifer is an experienced assistant principal with an emphasis in social emotional learning and well-being. She's skilled in classroom management, lesson planning, curriculum development, teacher training, and secondary education. And she has 30 years in education, and her MS is focused in school administration. Jennifer consults on the needs of students in academics and their social and emotional needs to be successful at school and in life. And Jennifer, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, I mean, I've been around for quite a long time. And in 1994, I started as a health and physical education teacher. And so I've kind of been, in touch with the social emotional work for quite a while, and then came to administration. And so here I am at year 30 with, this found passion that I've had for the past 6 years or so to help students.
And let me see, there's the Q. So there's a Q&A at the bottom. If you have any questions at any time during the presentation, if you put that in the Q&A, then we can address it at the end. But I'm going to go ahead and get started with our first question. And I want to know, what is it that inspired you to pursue a mental wellness center in the first place? And give us a date when all this started.
I had spent my first 24 years of education in a junior high setting. And I knew I was being transferred to a high school, and I had been researching wellness centers, and I thought this would be a great idea to bring to the high school. That was 2018. And in 2019, I was put on a district leadership team that focused on student wellness. And there was a student wellness center that we had heard of down south in St. George, Utah, that we went to visit as a team, gathered all sorts of information, ideas, and, thought this is great. Like, I think this will work really well. As we were packing up to come home from St. George, I got a phone call that we had a student the night before take his life. And so you could imagine that ride home, full of brainstorming and what can we do and how can we do this, because this was the end of October, 1st of November in 2019, and funds are already set, budgets are already made. There wasn't money for something like this. 5 days later, we had our second student take his life. And so this really lit a fire. Like, I knew a wellness center wouldn't, solve that whole problem, but I knew it could help. And so we always say, if it helps one student, then it's so worth it. And so that's kind of how it was, really come to life. Money was the biggest issue. And we had a nonprofit approach us called the I Am Foundation. They had heard about what was happening at our school and pitched a model to me where our school wouldn't have to pay for anything. And so, yeah, it was called the I Am Foundation, and they focus on several aspects of, living a balanced life. And one of those pillars is social and emotional health for students. And so we ended up partnering with them. We actually, went out and raised money. We put on lists like Amazon wish lists, and parents filled those super quick. And we actually ended up going to Palo Alto out the days wellness center started in the Bay Area. And so we went out to Palo Alto to kind of look at their model and what they did. Now, you compare California and Utah, so many things that they can do out there that don't fly here. We're, you know, way more conservative. They were awesome. Like, I would love to see that. Maybe someday we'll get there. But we came back on a Saturday, I believe. This was in March. So we had been working on opening our wellness center for 2 months. And we got a phone call that Saturday morning that we had a third student take his life. And so we were going to go ahead. We were planning on opening that next week. We did that. We opened. We had over 400 kids come through that wellness center that week. They just needed a place to be sad. They needed a place to talk about their friends, to grieve. They just needed a safe space. And it served that purpose that week. That Friday of the end of that week, we closed and shut down for COVID. And so, you know, we had 5 great days of helping kids. And the scary thing was, you know, you have all these kids that came in for help and needing a space. Now we're shut down. What are these kids going to do now? So that was hard, because there's a constant worry, you know, we're not there to support them.
Well, do you think the student suicide sort of fueled the intensity of that fundraising? And is that kind of how you got so much support? Because
yes,
lots of times people don't put this as a priority. And it sounded like everybody kind of put it as a priority.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knew in the community, our stakeholders, what had happened at our school. And so we were kind of primed for something, and people wanted to help any way they could. And funny enough, the most money we received from people, companies, were our small businesses within our community. They were fantastic. We went in to the local paint store, and the manager there donated all the paint. He said, I have a brother who was struggled in high school, and he could have used a place like this. Here's the paint. You know what I mean? So things like that happened all the time, because everybody has a story. Everybody has, I mean, the more I talk to people, you know, somebody knows someone, or, you know, a family member. So that's what really helped.
You ended up opening back up, right?
Yeah, we actually had, we were closed until the next school year. With that said, our wellness center was open a couple hours a day for kids to come if they needed to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, during COVID. I don't know if we cheated a little bit, but you know, when things like that happen, it's like these kids needed somebody, someplace.
Right.
And so we had visitors during COVID, and it was great. But yes, we opened up the following fall.
Okay. Now, I know you didn't start with this full-blown staff wellness center. Where did you start before you went wellness center? Or did you go all in?
We kind of went all in. That was one of the benefits and perks of working and partnering with the foundation. Now, the person the wellness center coordinator is the most important person in all of this. The most important thing to have in your wellness center is somebody who's licensed. Ours was a family counselor, who knows how to handle situations, who knows how to maybe read between the lines, who knows how to set boundaries and help kids. Now, she wasn't doing therapy in there, but she was really having conversations, and that person was paid for by the foundation that we partnered with. And so she became a part of our school community. She was, you know, school emailed. She had all of her background checks. She was fully integrated into our staff. She reported to me, but she was employed by the foundation.
Did you ever do groups in the wellness center?
Oh, yes. If you're ever looking to pitch, you know, a wellness center for your school, and, you know, you're all in, but you need to convince others that this will be helpful. We used it as an education center, which we did. Every Wednesday, we had Wellness Wednesdays, and students, we would bring cafeteria lunches in, and students would come and eat their lunch and listen and participate in a group discussion. we asked students what they want to learn about. And so we had a whole list of things. And Janet, who's our wellness coordinator, would run these groups, or she would bring in people. So one of the things really interesting we taught was how food affects your mood. And she brought in a nutritionist. We talked about meditation. We talked about toxic relationships, how to speak with your parents, all kinds of things, all kinds of wellness topics that the kids wanted to learn about. And so that was on Wednesdays. Probably lasted about 45 minutes every Wednesday. So that was huge.
Yeah. And, we hear a lot about access to care.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you agree with me on this or not, but we will never have enough practitioners to meet the need.
Mhm.
And I think we need more of these group approaches to be able to meet the needs of students. And I think there's, they want to do what their peers do, and you
Mhm.
have a more controlled environment in which to do that.
Right.
And I think there's more incentive, there's more of a herd mentality in a good controlled environment in order to grow those skills. Would you agree with that?
100%. What was great about the Wellness Wednesdays too, when the kids come into the wellness center, they need to know they're learning how to decompress themselves. They're learning what works for them. And so those were also some of the things that were taught on Wellness Wednesdays. Try this, you can try this might work, and this is why. And so, yeah, they learned a lot. And what was really beautiful is they gained friends, and it was so nice to see.
So
So,
it sounds like it kind of built that connection and belonging, which I
yeah.
really feel like is the number one thing we need to do in schools, is build that sense of connection
Connection.
and belonging, particularly right now with education becoming so polarized. And I think that's a really beautiful example of that.
We had kids who would eat lunch alone, but we had the wellness center open during lunch. And so kids would come in, and we had 2 lunches. And so it was still functioning as a wellness center, but a quiet space. But kids would feel safe coming in there for lunch. At the beginning of the day, it was kind of a meeting place for kids. So they'd
Okay.
kind of get a cup of hot chocolate and meet their friends. And then the bell would ring. They would go off with their friends, go to class. And then, the wellness center was the wellness center. And so it bridged so many things.
Oh, I love that. The hot chocolate. That's a great
Yeah.
way to tempt
Well,
kids in there.
yeah. So many times, either kids are just hungry, or it's amazing what a cup of hot chocolate can do for a kid. So,
Yeah. Well, again, it gives them, they're doing something.
mhm.
Somebody else comes up, and that offers more opportunity for connection and conversation.
Yes.
And I really feel like our kids are struggling with the social skills.
Oh, for sure. Especially since the pandemic.
Right. I'm seeing, like, when I do a lot of surveys, like over half the kids are struggling with some kind of, social anxiety.
Mhm.
And I wasn't getting those types of numbers before that.
Right.
So speaking of numbers, how do you gather data and
Okay.
share some of the results?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a check-in and check-out system. Now our high school was prime for something, right? Because we had kids taking their lives. And so we really had teacher backing, which was really nice. That's a huge thing. And there's certain way to go about that as well. But every classroom had 2 wellness center passes, and kids could just grab one of the passes, no questions asked, make eye contact with the teacher, and then head down to the wellness center. They check in using a Google Sheet. So it tracks like what time, what class period, what the class subject is. And then they rank themselves on different emotions. I believe it's 5 different ones, like happy, sad, depressed, anxiety, and they would rank themselves on that. And then after they all check in, they would grab a tool or something to help them decompress, or just go sit quietly somewhere. And so we have a whole wall of things that kids can use, from weighted blankets, weighted stuffed animals, books, ear noise canceling headphones, puzzles, Coloring is a huge one. Kids love coloring because in the wellness center, we have a, like a big table with art supplies in the middle that they can just go and sit. And so kids were learning what worked for them. They also grabbed a timer. And so they have 20 minutes to decompress and, calm themselves and get ready to go through, about their day. The wellness coordinator checks in with them, 10 minutes. Is there anything I can do for you? Do you want to talk? If they do, great. If they don't, she just will leave them alone. After 20 minutes, we found that 80% of kids were ready to go back to class. They just needed a break. 20% of those kids, something bigger was going on. And so they needed, a little more intervention. And that could be, I need to go see my school counselor, the social worker, maybe contact parents. And so the wellness center coordinator is able to kind of go through that and kind of see what the next step is.
So it was also kind of a triage system for
sure.
kind of like kids who may not walk down to the school counselor, but they would go to the wellness center, even if they knew that was the conduit to the school counselor, because it felt less threatening.
Yeah, I love that you said triage, because that's the exact term that we use for the counseling department. In 2018, 2019 school year, our counseling department was packed with kids. You would see kids in there sitting on the couches with their hoodies pulled down, just needing a place to be, not necessarily needing to talk to somebody. And so the wellness center relieved all of that for the counseling office, and they really saw the kids that needed to be seen. And so that was huge for them.
That is fantastic. I mean, again, back to the access to care that we talk about all the time. And all the schools tell me we're so stretched thin. But I don't think all those kids need to be seen by a school counselor.
Right.
They just need to talk to a trusted adult. And I mean, you've got one trained, and have somebody check in, what we call the low-hanging fruit. I mean, when we do presentations somewhere, lots of times, it's going to be 1% to 2% of kids that actually need follow-up.
Right.
And we're out of every 1,000 kids. And then, so you have one, and then you have maybe one that gets referred out from 1,000 kids.
Right.
A lot of times they just want to say, what is depression? Or do you think my friend has depression? Or what can I do about a friend who is cutting? Or things like that.
Interesting you say that. Before the wellness center, kids were trying to do therapy for their friends on their own. You know what I mean? They listen, and then they take all of these heavy things on themselves, and they don't know what to say or what to do. And so one of the benefits of the wellness center, kids could take their friends there and say, here's Janet, she's really nice. You can talk to her. And we had times where I remember one time I was substituting in there because Janet was sick or something. And I remember this student come in, and she looks at me and she goes, is Janet here? I said, oh no, she's sick today. She turned right around and walked out. And so that tells us right there. And the data told us in our study that consistency is important for that person. It can't be rotated in and out. You can't have different people there. Kids have to know what they're going to, do and see, and who they're going to talk to when they get there.
So staff with a consistent person, what do you think if it was 2 people?
I mean, that could work, right? Like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, just so kids knew.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because kids, there's a lot of comfort in routine, especially struggling. And I know that's how we approach after grief too.
Right. And you were talking about, we did the same system for checkout. And so after 20 minutes, when, kids are ready to go back to class, they check out with the same system and then re-rank themselves on how they're feeling. And then the question is, why did the wellness center help you today, and how? And so it allows them to reflect on what they did while they were in the wellness center. And wow, this really did help me. So next time I'm feeling this way, I can go straight to that. Or, if I'm away from school, I know what to do because it worked for me at school.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have students that used it kind of to escape classroom work, and did they get rowdy? And if you did run into problems, if you didn't run into that as a problem, what other problems did you have?
Yeah, I mean, that's a valid point, right? And I know teachers were really, that was skeptical about that kids just using it to, slough their classes and ditch and whatever. You can tell when kids are there for the right reasons and when they're not. Like, you would have kids obviously text each other and say, meet in the wellness center, right? But you can pick up on that real quick from their energy. And, when you have this person who's in charge and well aware, she spotted it pretty easily and set boundaries. It's like, get a cup of hot chocolate and go back to class,
Okay,
So
good.
kids really valued the space, and they knew that if it was taken advantage of, it would go away. And so they didn't want it to go away. So overall, honestly, that was not a problem. It really truly was not a problem.
That's interesting. And
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it was not. So I'm going to back up to where you talked about teacher backing and teacher support.
Mhm.
And it sounded like that was a pretty important point. So I kind of wanted to dig into that for a minute.
Yeah. That is huge. And so when we were developing, our plan to implement our wellness center, we kind of had a task force or a team. And on that team, we had a parent. We had one of the school counselors, the lead counselor. We had our social worker. We had 2 students, and we had, was it 2 or 3 teachers and myself, and then the representatives from the foundation. And so, teachers are more apt to accept things when it's coming from their own peers, oh, this is admin telling us we're going to do this or whatever. And so to see their peers excited about it and understanding it, it was great. It was buy-in right there. Plus, we had those suicides. And so that was, we were kind of desperate.
Do you feel like that helped with behavior in the classroom and maybe fewer disciplines, less time administrating kind of
Yes.
disciplinary issues?
And kids will tell you that. Some of the comments are, it made me feel more calm. It made me able to focus more in class, and teachers recognize that as well. We did a study with Brigham Young University with a grad student about the perceptions of the wellness center. And those are things that came out from that study, were the reasons why they feel the wellness center helped them. And academics was one. It also helped attendance. So many times when kids are stressed or they're struggling at school, they have a panic attack or whatever, they go hide in the bathroom, or they call their parent to have them come get them. The wellness center provides that place where they can go and they know it's there. And so even just knowing that I have a place to go helps with that. I had a parent call me. She called me and said, my son has not gone a full week of school in 3 years until this week. And I believe he had visited the wellness center 3 times, but just knowing that he had that space, it was great for him. And so
So in terms of school safety, which I really feel like teachers and students find it really difficult to feel like school is a safe space for any number of reasons, whether it's violence or suicide or bullying or COVID. It sounds to me like it is punctuating that safe space of a place to go and creating that feeling of having a school safety, which
yes.
really strive for and is really hard to achieve these days.
Yeah. And especially with our most at risk, groups, our LGBTQ group kids love it. They love it because they feel safe there. The wellness coordinator understands them. She looks like this grandma, right? But her story is unreal and she has been through it and gets it. And these kids can feel that and know that. Yeah, we also found more girls attended more than boys. But we did have, males come. And it was a variety of kids. You kind of think of depressed kids, would be the only ones that would go or whatever, but it was the student body president. We had football players in there. We had, dancers in there, lacrosse players. We had all kinds of kids in there.
And I would imagine you could develop certain programs that would bring in, like those lunch and learn programs that would bring in different genders and sexes. I mean, if you had body image versus
Yes.
toxic masculinity is going to obviously bring in. I think it also, kind of meets them where they are.
Yeah.
I think that it's really difficult. We think in our adult world, well, we'll take our child to a therapist and we make an appointment and we drive them there and we wait in the parking lot. I just feel like that's kind of an outdated way to do things.
Yeah.
And we really do need to bring it to them. And we need to do that at universities in K through 12.
For sure. I mean, what was really interesting after our third student took his life, of course, we responded to the first two and did what we thought as adults was best, but we were missing something. Like, what are we missing? And so I got a group of students together on a Sunday and they came to the school and we had the question for them. What do you guys need? What are we missing? What do you need from us? And the coolest thing came out of it was, we want to see the adults in the building be more vulnerable. We want to see them that they're sad that Blake is gone. We want to see that they're upset about it. We want to see that it's okay to be sad. I mean, and it was really interesting. And the discussions that classes had with teachers who could do that, golden.
Yeah, that's what, that's kind of how I speak. And I find that people are more willing to open up and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Even parents will start to ask questions they wouldn't normally ask in front of other people. And because they're there, they will. And I mean, I've seen a lot of shocked school counselors saying they would never ask that in public anywhere else.
Right.
So and what did you do anything around that with that vulnerability piece on?
Yeah. We kind of had a guide for teachers, of a conversation that they could follow. If the teacher didn't feel comfortable, we had somebody else go up there with that teacher and kind of run that small group. So many teachers are really good at it, right? But others struggle and are uncomfortable with it for whatever reason. And so, yeah, that was kind of the format that we used that week.
I like that. So you offered support and you didn't disdain anybody who asked for it, but you encouraged them if they were uncomfortable with it, that they did have support and please ask for it.
Yeah. And so many times, like the first time, I think we had a PowerPoint that we went through and, I could just see kids, blah, 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 whatever. They're telling us all these things. This means nothing to us. And so to be able to have those real conversations and honest conversations and meet them where they are, like you said, works so well.
And that they are afraid to have those post-benching conversations.
Oh, yeah.
I've created scripts in my book because, they need to know that grief is normal. They need to talk about it. They need to talk about their friend, and the teacher needs to say how it feels to them. And it's interesting, some of the teachers I interviewed were very vulnerable with their students. And those students really opened up and it really made a difference. And one of them started a wellness club himself. He and another friend at the school. They were and then, they got other people, and it's still, it's been passed down. And he started, one in college too. So, you're kind of teaching them something to take forward with them.
Yes. You sparked my memory for something you were talking about, grief, because of all the death that had happened. In fact, by the end of COVID, we had 5 students gone. And so Janet, our wellness coordinator, ran a grief group. And it was once a month on Fridays, and those kids were targeted. I mean, anybody could come, but counselors knew which kids, whether that's a parent or their friend that took his life, or, it could be their dog. I mean, it could be anything. So those kids were specifically invited, and she ran those groups all year. So it was great.
And she got attendance.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We would, of course, have pizza there for the kids who, were invited, but
I think food is always good to have with kids, that
yeah, oh, for sure.
it kind of gives them an excuse. Well, I just go for the pizza, and that's not really what they go for, but
Right.
it gives them kind of a fallback to.
If that's what they need to say it.
Right, exactly. And I think that adults don't know how to grieve.
Right.
And a lot of people think you just push it away. And what I see administrators do a lot of times is they want to put their foot on the accelerator to get back to normal and glaze over all that ugly grief stuff. Okay, we're just going to say, hearts go out and prayers, and then they don't want to do it after that. And it's a long process. I mean, and then there's the question of the memorial, and people want to plant trees. No, don't plant trees, please. It's much better to do a community project.
Right.
So what are some other success stories or testimonials that you've gotten from parents, teachers, students?
One really, really stands out to me. I had a student, I was in the wellness center just checking things out and checking on everything. And the coordinator was also there, but one of I call them my high flyers, who was in my office often for behavior, came into the wellness center, obviously shaken up, like, it wasn't normal for him. And his leg was bouncing, and he was, and so I approached him and I said, he knows I tell this story, so I'm able to say his name. I said, Roman, what's the matter? What can I do for you? And he said, I tried to go talk to my counselor, but she was busy. And so I came here. I said, great. I go, why don't you sit for 10 minutes and, calm down a little bit, and then we can talk. And so 10 minutes goes by, and I said, Roman, what can I do for you? You're obviously distraught over something. I just really need to see Miss Davis. Okay, well, he's not going to ask for that normally. Like, that's not normal for him. And so I went down and got his counselor. She came down to the wellness center and escorted him back to her office. And she came down two hours later with tears in her eyes and said, Jen, this place is working. This kid had a plan. His plan was he had ordered like $200 worth of Monster drinks. He says, I only need 40 to take myself into a seizure, but I want to die. And so I'm going to take, 200. And so he had them in his backpack, ready to hike up into the mountains and do it that weekend. And, we were able to intervene, and his counselor, and he ended up graduating early, and he's doing fantastic.
Wow, that you got me grabbing the Kleenex. That really is a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
And that's only, one that we know of, right?
Right.
And I'm convinced there are more. It's really hard with a wellness center and something you're doing like this, because the leaders, the ones who make the decisions, wants to see the data, which is important. And we've got that, but I'm just like, oh, I just know in my heart, this is working. Like, I can see it. And, the feedback is amazing. So.
Yeah, I think those stories would get to people. I wonder if there's a way to gather more of those stories. What is, like, at the end of the year, what is the wellness center meant to you?
Yeah.
And tell the students that we need your input and we need your stories, because we want to keep this open, and we want to give people reasons. And the only way we're going to do that, and you know, even if somebody are willing to do it on video, which if they're under 18, you'd have to get permission. But anyway, some of those stories I think would really help them. And that just hit me when you were talking about that.
Yeah. We had a plan to make a video and just haven't followed through with that, talking about some of those stories.
Well, it's really hard to
Yeah.
make time to do, but I think if you assign, and I have a sheet that I'll send you, because number one, I want that Brigham Young study to be able to
Mhm.
put in the blog post. But I have like a handout guide of telling your story. You know, you want to start with a hardship, but you want to spend 25% or less of your time on that. And it's really the healing and the hope is where you spend most of your time. And because that, you know, you don't want to keep everybody in the dark dumpster forever.
Right.
But students listen to other students.
Right.
And I know that at a school in Massachusetts, Jennifer Hamilton did a series of those videos, and she has them available for students, and they have to log in.
Mhm.
They're not like on YouTube for the world to see, but you have to log in, and the students can see them and see people like them talking to them. And I think that is so powerful.
Yeah.
But I find that's one of those ideas I get a lot of pushback on, or there's so much stuff to do, they don't want to do it. But really, nothing is more effective than that. It is so
Yeah, agreed.
effective.
One of the things that our students did after for the next year, so 2020, when we all returned to school in masks, they made a video on what we wish what we wish our teachers knew. And it was them and quotes from them saying, I wish my teacher knew that I was, staying up late because doing my homework because I have to work and help my family with bills, stories like that. And then it was super cool. The teachers responded to what I wish my students knew. And, it was just the two groups being vulnerable and really coming to an understanding of each other.
Did you do how? So that's actually a fishbowl game. They call it fishbowl.
Mm-hmm.
There's one way in which you can do it where the students face each other and the adults are on the outside and they just listen to that conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're lucky to be there listening to that conversation.
Right.
What was the format like? Were people sitting at round tables? What was the format?
It was filmed. So it was a video that our video production class put out. And so they had gotten input from students all over campus.
That is very cool. That is a great idea.
It was awesome.
There are a lot of really good nugget ideas in here. And that, you and I've talked so many times, and I'm getting new ideas from this conversation. So is it still running now at the school where you were?
So I have been gone for 2 years. And so I am honestly not sure how things are going over there. I know they were switching things up just a little bit and no longer fell under the IM model. And so Janet pulled out. And so I don't know who they replaced her with or any of that. I kind of had to take a step back because I just couldn't stand to see it change, especially when we knew from the data from the study that it was working. And so I honestly am not sure. I'm just focusing now on our school, and we're in this talks of starting one. And so hopefully we can move forward with that at this new school that I'm at.
So in the future, would you ever think that that was a place you could kind of plug in, be a consultant for, building a wellness center at your school?
Absolutely. I know how, and it can be for all grades. It would just be a few adjustments here and there, K-12, it will work. Yeah, I have consulted many schools. I've been on phone calls with, school administrators from the East Coast, from California, all over the place, really. And schools from all over Utah have come to see the center at my old school. And so, yeah, I am willing to help anybody and show them the ropes. I mean, I have it down to a system. I know exactly what to do and how to do it.
Oh, you're also a speaker on the topic, because that's where we met. I was
Yes.
speaking at Utah Valley and you were there, and I came to watch yours after the keynote. And I mean, I picked it out of all the ones. I'm like, I gotta go see what this is all about. And I'm so glad I did. I mean,
Yes.
it was so worth it to learn about it. So
But yeah, the year we finished the study and it was published, we went on tour. We went to several conferences, one in Boston, we went to Arizona, another one in San Diego, a local one here. And so, yeah, we've been around talking about wellness centers and the positive effect they can have on students and their social emotional health.
because I was kind of trying to get a nonprofit here to establish one, and they passed. And I don't, I really wish this is something they would pick up on, because to me, you can't talk about addiction, you can't talk about self-harm, you can't talk about eating disorders. We're really talking about emotional wellness of students. I mean, if you're going to talk drugs, it comes back to mental health.
Right.
People do things like that because they're trying to cope, and they're unhealthy coping strategies.
Yeah. What I've found, as far as partnering with an outside entity, and I don't know if other school districts are like this, but I've heard, because I know the foundation, we worked with the IM Foundation. A lot of times they were on the same phone call as I was, talking to schools and whatnot, because they were very interested. It comes down to school districts don't like to partner with outside entities. Because of privacy, but there are ways around all of that. Like, we had an answer for all of the concerns, but they like to take care of things in-house.
Yeah, they do. We'll dig into that, some of those reasons a little bit. That, because I see that with me, two people will really want to hire me as a consultant, and then somebody at the upper university or K-12 is pushing back. Well, we can't share that. I'm like, remove the names.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to share certain data with me. I'm like, I don't need to know the names. I don't even, need to know a lot of information, but here's what I need to know.
Right.
And,
I think they do say privacy. That's a huge one. I think that they like to have control over the person who's there running the center. And I have talked and talked and talked till I'm blue in the face about this. I had a say in all of everything that happened. I had a say in who we hired. And if there was a problem, I could go to the person and address it. If the person wasn't working out, I would go to the head guy at the foundation and say, this isn't working out. We need to find somebody else. And so really, we had control over everything. I don't know. It's mind-boggling to me and baffling. Why would you not? Because schools are strapped as it is.
right. Well, they look at hiring more school counselors, right? And so they could work with the foundation, get all or most of it paid for, have it fully staffed, and take the weight or the workload off the counselors they have already, and they wouldn't need to hire anybody else. Because again, you go back to that triage.
And if you talk to any of the counselors, I mean, they loved it. They loved it. So it's just taking the time to really listen and not having, some preconceived notion in your head. And even at my new school, we had to, here at Lehigh High School, where I work now, our counselors, I consider myself an expert in wellness centers, and they have me here, but they still needed to go see another one that modeled after the one that we built, and so I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, it someone said it's university politics or school politics.
Mm-hmm.
The trouble is there's a lot of politics, even more in schools right now, which is what's making it difficult. But the students, I think that really getting students behind the effort, when you get them asking, it's hard to say no.
So we've had that. I had two students write a letter to the principal, and that's what sparked our team discussion. Because as a new administrator coming into the school like I did, and my fellow administrators who are listening to this, you don't come into a school and start changing things and say, we need to do this, this, and this. You kind of just hang back. And I have been known for my work in this and doing wellness centers and things like that. And so I really had to just step back and let things happen. And they wrote a letter to the principal, and he brought it up in our staff meeting, among the leadership team. And, it's moving. That's what made the counselors go down to this other school. And, the students are asking for this. They are asking for it.
Interesting. So where in the process are you now? And I know it moves slowly.
It does move slowly. I mean, really where I've told you, that they just went last week to look at this other one. And so, a lot of times it's a space issue in a school.
Right. It would be in a lot of our schools.
Yeah. You don't have to have, we had a big, nice classroom for ours. You don't have to have that. And it doesn't have to be as nice as the one that we built. But it needs to, have the same function and kind of feel the same. But the one we saw in St. George, Utah was in a small conference room that they, was in the library, in the media center that they converted.
Okay.
So.
One of the schools here has something similar, that they've started, and they have a trailer in the back, and that's their thing.
Yeah.
Then they had the students kind of decorate it. And what I really love is, and I want to know if you all do this too, is when you come in, you have to put your phone in a basket.
Yeah.
No phones are allowed in the space
Right.
over a certain line.
Yeah.
And I thought they would get pushback for that, because a lot of people say, well, I really want to listen to my music.
Right.
I don't really know how they address that, but that apparently hadn't been an issue. So,
I mean, we have iPads, right, with the Calm app that they can use for meditation. We've got tools for them to use that they don't need to have that. I don't know, you were talking about students. If you can see that art piece in the back of my, yeah, so that was done by a student. So all the artwork in the Wellness Center is done by students. It's student work. I made a copy of this one and to bring it with me. And so it's truly their space, and the art has meaning. It's just a beautiful thing to hear. Like this one, it's called Out of Darkness, and it's the student. You can see she's kind of leaving the darkness behind. We had these suicides at our school, and then we had COVID, but now like there is a light, there is a way out of this, and that's the way we're going. So
that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Is she an art student?
Yeah. She's now at the university majoring in art, but
so
I love that idea to have the student work on your walls.
Yeah, I really like that too. Again, it makes it their space. And we always want to do things as adults, and that, meets our needs, but not theirs. You mentioned earlier you stocking it, and you touched on it with the iPads. Tell us some of the nuts and bolts things that are included in the space that you have.
So if you think of an autistic child and you build your space around that, you've pretty much nailed it. So we're talking about the lighting, right? You don't want any of the overhead lights. The color of the room, it needs to be soothing. The textures of the furniture. We had pillows with positive sayings on them. What else? Smell. We have doTERRA is a company out here. I'm sure a lot of people across the country know them. Donate a huge box of their oils and diffuser for us. And so all of those things come into play when you're building your wellness center. And so those things are huge. You don't want busyness, right? You want kids to be able to come in and just, another thing we had too, we had like a Promethean board, and we would run all day long from YouTube nature scenes or, the water flowing and different things like that. So it
Very
can,
cool. What, did you have books and stuff
Mhm.
like that?
Yeah, we had books, we have, putty, we have Rubik's cubes, like I said, art supplies, the blankets, all kinds, kinetic sand. We had Buddha boards.
The
So a
wa-
lot.
the weighted blankets?
Mhm.
Okay. And you mentioned iPads, so you got all this through the foundation, or was that through the Amazon wish list?
Through the Amazon wish list, our school donated the iPads for
Oh,
us. Yeah. So,
so they kind of help with the space, and then you've
and
got,
the person.
okay, all
And
right.
then I would also, our school, so I set up through our foundation at school, I set up a wellness center account and parents would donate to that. And so with that, I would use to buy snacks for the wellness center. Like we would have healthy options and, kids could come in and ask for something. We would use that. We would sometimes need to replace some tools, or we also, we're very generous with like the putty, like if, would you like to take that and use it? Sure. And so there were things that had to be replenished, and we paid for those things.
Okay. So, I'm curious what advice you might have for others who might be interested in starting a similar, like you dove right in, but I think that's not always going to work with
Right.
everyone. Where would you suggest are places they could start sort of small?
Yeah. Well, we were in a unique situation, right? Where
Right.
we were desperate. But
It
if you're,
was a reaction to a crisis.
well, and that's the thing, for those of you listening, I was so tired of reacting. And maybe you're that way at your school too, is I want to be proactive. What's it going to take? Another child to take his or her life, and our response to that, I wish would have had the center open before, because who knows? Who knows?
I agree. It is very reactive. And that
Yes.
really, really bothers me. But I wonder, like, my niece started at school with a wellness group, and she borrowed a classroom before it started in the morning, and they just met with each other. And I was like, wow. And I think that that's a really good idea if you can have kind of at least a trained adult in that
Yeah.
space. Like,
You can run your wellness Wednesdays without a wellness center, right? So you can start with that. And counselors usually are super open to running those groups. We have a group, a meditation group that one of our counselors runs right now. And there's another one that our social worker is running. Oh, it's a grief group. It's a grief group. And so, you can start by doing those things. If you're really serious about looking into a wellness center, make sure you have all of that representation that I talked about, because everybody, it can't be, the assistant principal coming and saying, hey, we're building this wellness center and this is how it's going to work for us. And this is what we're going to do. It needs to be a collective effort. So there's buy-in. And then if there's any place for you to go and visit that maybe has one up and functioning, would be great too. The biggest key though, that I emphasize over and over again, is that person that is staffed with it.
right. Well, how did you found that through IM Foundation,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes. Yes. And she was actually working with them already, on this model of wellness centers and trying to get them into schools and that kind of thing.
That really sounds fantastic. I just love this idea. And I'm not going to be happy unless I get one in my area at some point. And
I can come out and help you.
I know who to call on, and I know the nonprofit to call on. I was trying to get somebody who started one to kind of do that. And I don't want to start a nonprofit though, but maybe I looked into donor directed funds,
Mhm.
and that could be something. But if you get IM, but you still got to have some other funding, because I think you need the community to buy into.
For sure. I mean, one of the things, let's see, I have that came out in the study that we could improve on was more advertising. That came from the parents, and working on the stigma, right? It got better as the years went on, you know, it was a normal thing. And let's see, the students, more time to use the wellness center. They just wanted to be in there for 45 minutes, right? Instead of the 20. So,
Oh, what was the purpose of the 20-minute time limit?
well, it's just a number that we came up with. You know, we figured kids can decompress and reset in that amount of time. And if they didn't, that's okay. You can stay. You know?
Right. So you didn't kick them out.
No, no way. No
Right.
way.
So it was kind of a suggestion that they have that amount of time.
So at my school, my current school, I'm over 504 plans, which those are plans to help students that are disadvantaged as far as, you know, maybe they have severe anxiety, depression, ADHD. We provide some accommodations and to help them access the curriculum to be more successful. And a lot of requests are they need to take a break during school, during class, anytime, but then where do they go? Right. And so that was a huge issue. I had a student at my old school. He was agoraphobic. So big groups, right? And so we actually built in a wellness center period for him every other day. And it worked wonders. By his senior year, he wasn't even using the wellness center. So,
You know, that's what they did with my son is when he was at a boarding school, he had a class and he would go see his therapist at third period. And then somebody else would come after that. And that was a really beautiful model.
yeah,
So
I know it. Yes. At Palo Alto, the kids there have therapy during the school day. So they've partnered with like a local, we have Wasatch Mental Health here who we partner with, but these counselors are actually on campus. So the kids don't have to leave school. They stay there. It's genius, you know, because these kids are busy, right? They are engaged in other things after school. I love that model.
Charles went to Wasatch Academy out in Utah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
that they did it. But I was thinking even better is kind of have that wellness group approach too. But I think he probably needed one-on-one, but then not everybody does. So
right. But I mean, maybe if he had, you know, something sooner, because eventually, yeah, he for sure needed one-on-one, right?
yeah. So I want to give you a moment to tell everybody where they can find you. I did put in the chat where we're both on LinkedIn. We would love for you to follow us on LinkedIn. We've got our email addresses in there. Tell us about what your next steps are.
I'm actually, this is year 30 for me in education, and I'm, well, I love my job. I love, love, love my job, and I don't have complaints here at all. I'm just tired of all the other extra things besides students, like you said, the politics and the different things like that. So I'm actually looking to consult more and, help schools in their efforts for student wellness. I mean, I've seen the evolution in the decline, from 1994 to now, and it is so different. We're in a whole different ball game here now. And so I know schools are desperate for help and what can we do? And I want to go around and help schools. That's what I would like to do and still have an impact on kids.
Yeah, and that is what everybody likes the most is being in there one-on-one with the kids. And that's what I like too. Yeah, I love speaking, but I love being with the audience afterwards and hearing their stories. Yeah. So I really appreciate this. Is such a rich conversation. We're going to be putting this on YouTube, and I'm be doing a blog post, and it'll have a transcript, and we'll break down some of the QA and even chapters. So you don't even have to watch the whole video, but I recommend that anybody that's missed part of it go back and see the whole thing. So I want to respect everybody's time. It's 6 p.m. So say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Dan, I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.